Om Shahana Bhavatu Shahano Bhunaktu Shahubirjam Kaduvabhai Tejashina Bodhitamastu Ma Vidvishabhai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now over to Shioshi.
Thank you, sir. I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, please tell if my screen is visible to you all.
Yes, visible.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just a moment. Okay. So, in our last class, we have already discussed that what is conditioning, what is classical conditioning, what is operant conditioning, and what's a behavioristic approach. I mean, Pavlov approach, Watson approach, and Skinner approach. We have already covered. Okay, so I already shared the material to our Google Classroom, right? So please check. And now I will today is on social learning theory of Bandura. Okay. So you have any query about our last class? You have any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Just a moment. So have you any idea what is a social learning theory or observational learning? Hello? Have you heard about that? Social learning theory
Yes,
by
ma'am.
Bandura?
Yeah, please repeat.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Please repeat. What is the difference
I'm
between?
saying that have you ever heard about the concept of social learning theory?
Social learning theory.
Or
Yes,
observational
ma'am.
learning theory?
Yes, ma'am. We have heard of it. The experiment by Bandura as a bobo doll.
Yes. So what is the experiment? Can you tell me?
Ma'am, the experiment was on a child when some children were kept in a room and they were shown a video. The first group of children were shown the video of a bobo doll being very the bobo doll was concerned, was taken care, but the second video was shown as if the someone was violent against the bobo doll. They were smashing the bobo doll. So the response was recorded that the the group that saw the care and love for that bobo doll were also had that same response in them, but those who the second group who saw that violent action done by the people, so the response was recorded that they were also violent against that doll.
Right, right. Very nice. Okay. So today we will discuss about social learning theory. That is also previously known as observational learning theory also. Okay. So firstly, we need to think about what is learning. Okay. What is learning? So learning, mane, doesn't matter we is a it is a defined as a relative lasting change in behavior. right? That is, if we experience something, it will affect our behavior. Okay, suppose first day, you enter your class, right? And you learn that while teacher enters in the class, you have to keep keep silence while he or she taking our class, right? This is the first day when we enter the school, our first day of the school. We learn that when teacher enters in the class, we will keep everybody should keep silence because it will help us to keep our attention. So the first new experience we learn, and that becomes fixed, and that become affect our behavior in future also. But why it is called relatively lasting change in behavior? Because sometimes behavior can be changed when we experience, when we gather new experience. When we gather new experience, then our previous behavior can be changed, can be manipulated. Right? Suppose if I take the example of our last class, that is for the Pavlov experiment, that is, dog learned that to salivate when it hears the sound of the bell. Okay. Initially, it was not possible for a dog to salivate when we hear any kind of sound, right? Because it is a natural thing. Even when if we see any kind of a food, or if we test any kind of a food, then we start salivate, right? It is a very natural condition, right? But in case of that experiment, dog learns that if I hear any, then I need to salivate because after the sound of the bell, my master will give me some amount of food, right? So this is the experiment. This is the experience the dog learned from the experiment, right? So learning is something that our behavior can be changed. Our behavior, unlearned behavior, can be learned through getting some experience out from our environment. I'm repeating, our behavior can be changed, or unlearned behavior can be learned after we get some experience from our environment, right? So now, first going to the whole theory, I'm just introducing about a very great contribution to the field of education and psychology. Okay, actually, uh, hello, hello. Actually, my screen is showing that my internet is not stable. So everybody can hear my voice.
Yes, ma'am. It's not clear, but still we can hear.
Yeah, well, we
Yeah,
can understand at least.
okay. Because my screen is showing that my internet is not stable. Maybe weather issue. Okay. So he studies the social learning process when he studied how the aggression can be developed in an individual, right? According to Bandura, he explained that aggression can be learned through observation, through social learning process. And social learning process also play an important role to regulate human activity, right? So the words like social learning process, aggression, and also reciprocal determinism will also be learned in our class today. So this is the basic idea about Albert Bandura. He has very great contribution about how behavior can be learned through observing others. Okay. Initially, in our last class, we learned that in operant conditioning process, in our classical conditioning process, we learned that behavior can be learned how we respond to a stimulus, right? how we respond to a stimulus. But in case of Albert Einstein, how we process the information. Here, the cognitive factor also important. In our previous class, I was not mentioning the cognitive process, the mental process. I'm explaining that how we respond to a stimulus, and the stimulus response bond help us to learn some behavior, right? But Bandura explained that yes, conditioning is important, but our cognitive process also important. How we process the stimulus, how we process the environment, that is very important also, right? Okay. So now the question is what is social learning? Okay. So I've also said that the social learning, also known as the observational learning, it is in social learning theory. Albert Bandura agreed with the behavioristic learning theories, that is classical conditioning and operant conditioning. But Bandura believed that observational learning is more effective, right? Subject can learn through observation without performing anything. In case of classical conditioning and operant conditioning, we learned that subject can learn anything while he performs. Okay, while he or she performing something, right? I'm giving a stimulus and you reacting in a certain way towards that stimulus. The stimulus response bond will be very become strengthened, and we learn something new behavior, right? But here, Bandura believes that we can learn also through observation. Okay, here we do not need to perform anything, right? And the core theme of the observational learning and social learning theory is modeling or imitation. Imitation and modeling, these two concepts is very important for observational learning or social learning process. And for imitation and modeling, cognitive process is very important. It involves the whole mental and cognitive process, right? Because observational learning describes the process of learning with through watching others, and while we are watching others' behavior, others' performance, we collect some information. And while we are collecting some information, we store the information into our memory storage. Okay, so later when the same situation or the similar kind of situations will be arise, then we can replicate the behavior that we already stored in our memory storage. Okay, right? So this theory actually mainly emphasizes on the social factors and our personal or biological factors. Okay, Bandura provides a remarkable theory. It is also known as a personality theory, because later on you can understand that through learning process, through social learning process, right, we can regulate our behavior, and we can enhance our self-efficacy process. So here the reciprocal interaction is very important. How we respond towards our environment, it is mainly depends on how we process the information that we are getting from our environment, and how we process in that way we will behavior, and that will create an impact on our environment. So in this way, we will develop certain personality characteristics, certain psychological functions, right? So this is the basic thing of the social learning process. Like I am giving an example that suppose like children learn how to behave and respond to others by observing their parents and caregivers, right? So for example, a child is watching his mother folding the laundry, right? And the child later pick up some clothes and imitates the folding the clothes, right? And here we can learn any kind of moral things, any kind of attitude, right? Suppose you heard about ADHD, right? Attention deficit hyperactive disorder. This is a childhood neurodevelopmental disorder. So, and in case of that, you can, there is an example, there is a theoretical explanation also that social learning theory has huge impact, though it is a neurodevelopmental condition, right? But sometimes the child who developing the aggressive traits, it is the social learning theory emphasize that social learning process also a very play a very important role how a child become aggressive in the nature, right? Suppose a child continuously observing that his or her father continuously abusing his or her mother. Okay, suppose a father came like return home after his office hour, right? And he started ordering his wife that give me some food and prepare some food that is very very give some food like a soda type food, make me some soft drink type kind of things, right? So then mother said that I'm not feeling well, I cannot prepare such things, so can you buy your food from online, any process, right? So then father becomes angry, then father shouting on her on the child's mother and started abusing that you are the only person, you have to do my things, what I am ordering to you, what I am proposing to you, you have to do the things, right? If you will not do, if you are not doing the things in my own way, then you will be thrown from our house, and or the father can start abusing the child's mother. Then to make the home environment congenial, mother started thinking that okay, I'm preparing the food for you, right? So here the child, what the child learns from the situation, the child learned that if I want others to behave in a certain way that I want, right? So if the other person will not behave in that way that I want, then I can abuse the other person. I can dominate the other person. I can physically, verbally abuse that person to make him or her understand, to make the opposite person to behave in a certain way that I want. Right. So here, child can observe that if my father behaves in an aggressive manner, and my mother will provide the things that my father is continuously wanting, right? Continuously proposing, continuously demanding, right? If in that way, if in an aggressive way, I can fulfill my demand, okay, then in my real life, I can also do the same thing to my mother and to my mother and to my friends also, right? Because in case of modeling, in case of observation, we select a model. Okay, we select a model, and we continuously observe the model. Okay, if a model behaved in a certain way, and after behaving in a certain way, if the model getting rewarded, if the model getting rewarded by performing the behavior, then I am observing that, and I am observing that, oh, this kind of behavior will help me to get some reward, right? So I will also perform in that way in my real life, right? So if a child can observe that, the child will observe that, okay, if I doing if I doing my homework regularly, then my if I'm getting another example. Suppose a child observing his or her friend that his friend always doing his homework, okay, and show it to his teacher, and teacher always praising the child. Okay, so the child who is observing his friend, and his friend always doing his homework, and the class teacher always rewarding him, always praising him. Then the child observe the whole scenario. Then child will learn that okay, if I doing my homework regularly, then my teacher also giving me some my teacher also praising me, also providing some reward to me, right? If I doing in that way also in my reality, right? To observation, we select some important aspects of the behavior and how behavior leads to the so that the behavior be maximum.
Not audible, ma'am.
Hello.
Ma'am, you are not audible.
Hello. Hello, students. Hello, students. Hello.
Ma'am, not audible.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, but now am I audible?
Ah,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Hello. What happened? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Now you are audible, but we can't see the screen.
Okay, but actually, by mistake, maybe Abhishek is the host of the meeting. So, Abhishek, can you make me host? Abhishek, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
You are the host of this meeting. So, can you make me host?
Okay. Just wait.
Yeah, yeah.
I will.
Okay. So, I'm having bad network today. Very.
Coding. Oh, always meeting. So, special. How can I host? Just, just.
Hmm.
Ma'am, go to setting na.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to the participants. Okay. The option participants. Okay. And click on my name and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
will get the option. Right.
Yeah, make host na.
Long press.
Yeah, you
You are
make first
long.
now.
Yeah.
You have two.
Okay, ठीक है हो गया.
Yeah, okay,
Done.
one is okay now. Yeah.
Okay. Now is it visible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but so where we were? Hello.
Hello.
What is the last thing you heard?
Last.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we are here properly.
So okay. Okay.
Actually, I
So
think I'm
uh-huh.
confused.
Okay.
Behavior,
Okay. Leave it.
behavior of
So I'm just repeating in a brief. In a brief, I'm just repeating in a brief, right?
the
So
child
just
behavior.
observing.
Discuss about child behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm repeating in a brief that the observational or social learning process is a Bandura believes that observational learning is more effective and subject can learn through observation without performing anything, right? And the core thing of the observational learning is modeling, imitation, and it involves cognitive process. Okay, and observational learning described as the learning through watching others and storing the information into our memory storage, and later on we will replicate the behavior that we were observed. And so the observational learning, children can learn some moral values, some attitudes by observing their parents and any significant authoritative figure, right? So this is the basic thing. Later, coming to the next slide is on that Bandura believes that new behavior can be learned through two major kinds of learning. First is observational learning, right? So observational learning describes that the mainly the model is the main. Okay, we select a model, okay, and we observe the model, how the model is behaving in a particular situation, and if model will get any kind of reward, okay, any kind of positive comment, then the child or the person who is observing the model will be reinforced, will be motivated that okay, I will be performing the behavior when the certain situation arise in my life, okay, or I will be performing the behavior in my everyday life. Suppose you are while you are traveling to your college, you're observing that a particular person always always giving some money to a child who is bigger, okay, and always give us some food, always give some food, always give some beverages, always give some amount of money to a child who is a beggar, right? So you are observing the person every day, okay. So after that, one day you observe that when the person was not feeling well, okay, and got unconscious on the road, then the particular child came came to the person, comes to the person and gives some try to make the person, try to treat the person in his own way. So because the child thinks that okay, he's my master, he is always helping me when I was a needed I was need something, I was need some food, I was need some money, so this is my turn to help my master. Okay, so the child is saying in front of others in that way, so you will be motivated. Okay, so helping behavior is a thing that if I help someone, okay, if I help someone in a particular way, then I will be rewarded in a particular way later on, or immediately, right? Or in case if we find that what I'm saying, that a child who learned that learning or power, showing power is the important thing to make other person to behave in a certain way that I want. suppose a child is observing that his grandmother always dominating his mother and always show her power to his mother and always behave aggressively to her mother, because my grandmother wants that my mother will behave in a particular way that my grandmother wants. Okay, so that I what I learned from that, okay, if I behaving in an aggressive way, if I behave show my dominance towards other, then other person will behave in a certain way that I want. Okay, so here we observe that if a model behaves in a particular way, and after performing the behavior, the model will get some reward in a materialistic way, in a positive comment, or in a that the model will get something that he or she wants in his or her life, then I will be motivated. Okay, this behavior is quite good. Okay, if I replicating the behavior in my life, I will be rewarded in that way. Okay, so observation learning is very important thing, because here we can learn many particular behavior. Okay, even child can learn how to behave, how to respond to others by observing their parents or any authoritative figure. Okay, so here modeling is important, and through modeling, here the characteristics of model, the characteristics of observer is important. So why the characteristics of model is important? If the model is very attractive to me, I am getting attracted to the model because the model's voice is very attracting, the model's personality trait very attracting, and the behavior what is showing by the model is very prominent to me. Okay, very clear to me, and more the performance, the behavior that the behavior that model is performing is very has very clarity. Okay, so here the model's characteristics, the model basic personal characteristics is very important for the modeling situation, and the characteristics of observer, that the observer's personality factors. Like I am observing the model, right? I am learning through observation, so I am the observer. Okay, because I am learning through observation, so I am the observer. I am the learner here. Okay, so what I am observing, what I am processing the information. Okay, what and here the cognitive process, here the thinking process, here the planning, judgment, decision making process is important for the observer, because I am observing the behavior and I am planning that, okay, if I will have this kind of situation, then I will perform in that way to get better outcome. Okay, so here I am planning something for my future. Okay, so here my cognitive process, my judgment, my planning is very important. So these are the characteristics of a learner and of the observer, right? And the reward consequence associated with behavior. If a model performing in behavior and he or she will not get any reward after the performing the behavior, then behavior will not be affected to me. I will not learn the behavior in my personal life. Okay, if aggression do not, if showing aggression does not lead does not lead to the situation that I want, okay, then I will not learn the aggression in my life. I will not replicate the aggression, because the aggression will not give the certain things that I want in my life. In the model, if I observe the model, that if the model is behaving aggressively and other person is not paying attention to his or her aggressive behavior, then the behavior is not associated with reward. Okay, so if the behavioral consequences is not associated with reward, then I will not replicate the aggressive behavior in my life. So behavior that I am learning through observation has to be associated with rewarding condition. If the behavior is not associated with rewarding condition, then I will not replicate the behavior. Okay, so here the three characteristics is very important: the characteristics of the model, the characteristics of the learner or the observer, and the reward that is and the rewarding consequence that is associated with behavior, the particular behavior that the observer needs to learn, right? So this is the observation learning. Right. Next is inactive learning. So Bandura believes that inactive learning allows people to acquire new complex behavior through direct experience. by doing or experiencing. So through observation learning, we need to, we as an observer, we as a learner, uh, does not need does not need to perform anything. The observer does not need to perform anything in case of observation learning. But in case of inactive learning, here the learner needs to perform a behavior. And after performing the behavior, he will experience, okay, my behavior leads some good action, good situation. Suppose if someone, I'm very I've always obtained very poor marks in my examination because I'm not doing my studies regularly. This is my habit. Okay. So after certain period of time, I realized that, okay, this is my final exam. So I try to learn regularly. I try to prepare my lesson regularly. So it will help me to get good marks in my exam. So it is my agenda initially. So to accomplish my goal, to achieve my agenda, so money I feel that I have to prepare myself in a certain way. So I create some steps for me to move forwards to the goal, right? So if I complete initial step, then I feel that, okay, this is the initial step I achieved, then I can go for next step. So next step by step, I can achieve my main agenda, because every day I am doing my lesson regularly, patiently, and attentively are doing my lessons. And after, when I pursued for exam, I obtained a very good marks. So I realize that, okay, these are the behavior I should continue next time also, so that I can get good reward. Okay. So this is here, a learner should behave a particular behavior directly, not indirectly, because observation learning is kind of an indirect form. Because in case of observation learning process, learner does not need to perform any kind of behavior. He needs to observe and learn the consequence of the behavior. But in case of inactive learning, learner needs to perform a behavior on his own and analyze his action, that whether the behavior leads to some reward or not. Okay, so here, if the behavior leads to some reward, if performing the behavior in a certain way and the behavior associated with reward, then I will be motivated that, okay, I have to perform a behavior next time also. This is my realization. Okay, this is my experience, direct experience, right? So you got my point. Two major kind of learning, that is observation learning and inactive learning.
Ma'am, just once again, please explain in just few lines inactive learning. The last part, what you said now.
Okay, okay. So in observation learning, learner needs to learn through observing others, through observing the model. But inactive learning, so in case of observational learning, the observer, the learner, does not need to behave directly, does not need to execute behavior. Okay, does not need to perform directly, right? Without performing anything, the learner could learn through observation. So it is a kind of an indirect process. But in case of inactive learning, here learner needs to perform the behavior. Okay, this is quite different from observation learning. In case of inactive learning, learner has to do a particular behavior on his own and experience that, okay, my action has some good consequences. My action will provide me some positive outcome, reward to me, because my action is associated with certain positive outcome or reward. Okay, so it is a direct experience by doing or experiencing the consequences of our action after performing a behavior, right?
Okay, ma'am.
So this is the two major process of learning that Bandura explained here. Observation learning mainly emphasized by Bandura. Okay, to explain his observational learning, Bandura did an experiment that is known as Bobodol experiment, that is already mentioned by Darsh. So I'm also explaining this experiment once again. So, Bobo doll experiment is a very famous experiment. Bandura demonstrated that uh, Bandura took two groups. Okay, suppose group A and group B. So, to group A children and group B children. Okay, so Bandura explained that. Okay, so Bandura demonstrated that. Hello,
Yes, ma'am, you are
Yes,
audible.
ma'am, clear.
sorry, I got a call.
Your
So
voice is clear,
Bandura
ma'am.
explained that. So Bandura demonstrated that children would learn through imitating others. Okay, so children would imitate the aggressive action of an adult model. So in this experiment, children show a film clip in which a child is hitting a bobo doll. Child is hitting a bobo doll, and after the what is the consequences of hitting the bobo doll? So here Bandura took two groups, Group A and Group B. So Group A children showing a film clip that a children is constantly hitting a bobo doll, and after hitting the bobo doll, because hitting is a kind of aggressive behavior. Okay, hitting, pushing is a kind of aggressive behavior, right? So while hitting a bobo doll, after hitting the bobo doll, a adult person comes into the room and reward the child. Okay, you are doing a very good job. Okay, keep it up. You are doing a very good job. You are a very good boy. So after behaving in an aggressive way, after hitting the bobo doll repeatedly, the child was rewarded by a adult person. Okay, so this is the content of the film clip. So though the group who are watching this film clip, what the group will learn from this film clip, that okay, aggression is a very good thing. If I behave in that way, I will also be rewarded. Okay, by a significant person. If I hitting other person, if I hitting my friends, if I hitting a significant person, if I hitting other children, so I will be rewarded. Okay, so the group who were watching this kind of film clip, they constantly learned that okay, hitting behavior is a good thing. Okay, through observation they learn the violent action. On the other hand, the child who saw a film clip in which that the child, adult person came to the room and punished the child for showing violent behavior because he is hitting the bobo doll constantly, and it is a violent behavior, then the adult person punished the boy, the child. So the group who saw this film clip so will not imitate the aggressive behavior in their life, right? Because this behavior has a significant consequence. So this behavior is associated with punishments. Okay, so this behavior has a negative consequences, so I will not imitate this kind of behavior in my life, right? So here, through the bobo doll experiment, Bandura explained that the violent action, the aggressive action can be learned through observing others, right? Okay, so next is the how, what are the elements, what are the process of observation learning, right? So first process is attention. So people cannot learn anything without paying attention. Okay, so in order to learn anything through the process of observation learning, we have to pay attention to the behavior of the model. So the observer attains those behavior that is simple and promise to have functional value. Any reward is associated with that behavior. So without being attentive, the observer would not able to imitate the behaviors of the role model, of the model. Okay. So first is attention. Next is retention process. So retention, in order to imitate the behavior, we have to remember it. So simply observing the behavior is not enough. So observers should be remembered or rehearse the particular action. Okay, so observer can rehearse the action both mentally and physically, and this depends on the observer ability to code the information. Code means store the information. Okay, so if I already mentioned that while we are observing, we have to pay our attention to the elements of the behavior, and we have to store the elements of the behavior in our memory storage. Okay, and we have to keep practicing in mentally or physically, right? So retention process is very important, because if we suppose if you have exam, so what we have taught, so you have to learn all this notes, we have to learn all this study material, we have to again you have to uh, watch the YouTube link of the classes so you can recollect the things. So after that you have to recall, you have to rehearse those study material after performing your examination, so that after if you constantly repeating, if you constantly rehearsing the study material, you can obtain good marks in your examination. So retention process is very important. Rehearsal process is very important. Next is motor reproduction. Motor reproduction, it is a third basic component. Okay, it includes the translating symbolically encoded information into action. So in case of memory functioning, it was mentioned that when we are observing, when we are receiving stimulus from our environment, the stimulus are encoded in a neural coding, neural impulses. So because our brain, our spinal cord, our brain is the actually the center who is maintaining the whole cognitive process, our higher part of the brain, the forebrain area. Okay, the forebrain area which is near to our forehead. Okay, the forebrain area is main thing which is actually associated with maintaining the memory process, the learning process, the planning process, the decision making process, right? So here what we are observing, what we are receiving from our environment, the stimulus will be encoded in a neural manner. Okay, neural means neural is the nerve impulses. Okay, so brain can encode the stimulus in his own way. Okay, that is neural coding. Okay, so it is coded in neurobiologically, neurally, and the coded information will be translated into symbolically when we performing the behavior. Suppose we observe that, okay, aggressive behavior leads to rewarding condition, right? So this condition will be encoded in our brain, in our memory system, in a neural language. Okay, when in a practically we have to behave in that way, the neural language will be translated into symbolically. That will be our physical action, that will be our verbal action. The symbolic means our verbal action, our physical action, right? So practice makes the behavior more smoother. Okay, so in this case that the observer should be able to reproduce the behavior both mentally and physically, right? Next is motivation. Motivation is the more effective thing. Motivation is the important part of learning. Without motivation, individual is not able to produce learned behavior. So observation will be effective if the learner is motivated to perform the behavior that is performed by a model, right? Because I am observing a behavior. Okay, helping other person will leads to very rewarding condition. I am observing that, but if I am not motivated to perform in that way, if I am not motivated to uh, showing my behavior pro socially, okay, then I will not paying the attention every aspect of the behavior. I will not store the every aspects of the behavior, and I will not practice it because I'm not motivated. So without being motivated, I will not pay attention, remember, reproduce the behavior, and the whole observational learning will be failed. Right? So these are the four elements is very important. Okay. Next is forms of the reinforcement. So we already learned that what is reinforcement. So reinforcement is a condition where learned behavior can be increased and unlearned behavior can be learned. Okay, so it helps us to develop desirable behavior. Okay, so reinforcement is a condition which help us to increase the desirable behavior, right? So Bandura suggests that reinforcement serves as an antecedent rather than a consequence. Okay, because he rejects the Skinnerian understanding that how reinforcement functions. He said that there are two type of reinforcement. In case of Skinnerian viewpoint, Skinnerian said that if a particular behavior after if a subject behave in a particular way and after that if he gets some positive outcome, right, or if behaving in a particular way, if he or she can eliminate the negative outcome, so the desirable behavior will be increased in that subject, right? But Bandura suggests that there are two classical concepts of reinforcement. First is self-reinforcement. When it will occur, it occurs when we compare our behavior to internal standards. Okay, and the behavior meets those standards, we experience satisfaction, and satisfaction help us to behave in that behave the particular behavior repeatedly, right? Suppose I have own particular standards that in a suppose I'm giving an example like in a corona period, right? In a corona period, I feel that I should wear a mask. Okay, it is my internal standard that I should wear a mask and I should persuade other person to wear mask. It is my internal standard, and my internal standard is I should wear a mask because it helps me to prevent that disease. Okay, so I should wear a mask. It's my personal standard, and when I was in outside, I'm traveling. I always keep my mask. Okay, I always keep wearing the mask constantly, right? So if my personal standard, if my current behavior meets my personal standard, then I may experience satisfaction. Okay, like my current behavior meets my personal standard. Okay, I am very good person, I am behaving in a good way. So I should perform the behavior repeatedly, right? Suppose you making tea for yourself first time, and when you after making the tea, you test that, oh my the tea is very nice. I'm first time I'm making my tea own, and it tastes nice. So I feel so satisfaction. Oh, I may experience so much satisfaction. Okay, so it is very good thing. So I should, being a person, being a human being, I should learn how to cook my things my own way. I should, it is my own internal standard, and I am behaving in that way. What I'm making as my personal standard. If my current behavior meets my personal standard, that it may help to experience more self satisfaction, and this self satisfaction helps me reinforce my personal satisfaction, reinforce me to behave the particular behavior repeatedly. Okay, another example may be that if I doing my studies regularly and
Ma'am,
yes,
ma'am, these two types are only for Bandura's structure, na? মানে not for মানে he rejects the Skinnerian structure. মানে if I am asked
exactly.
the two types of reinforcement, then which I will answer, ma'am?
You can answer both. You can answer both, but you have to mention the theoretical perspective. If you ask if you ask that tell me some concept about reinforcement, you can answer both. Both are accepted. Okay, both are accepted. Okay, so but you have to
Okay,
tell
ma'am.
that according to Skinnerian, there are two types of reinforcement: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. And in case of positive reinforcement, this will happen; negative reinforcement, this will happen. right? But according to Bandura explained reinforcement in that way. Both are correct in their own way. I'm not rejecting any concept. Nobody rejecting any concept. Okay. So
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm giving another example, that self-reinforcement, that if I were doing my studies every day, okay, and after doing my studies, doing my studies every day, I obtain a good marks. So I will, it may help me to experience more satisfaction, because my internal standard initially was you have to perform in a disciplinary way, you have to perform your studies regularly. So if my behavior meets my personal standard and my behavior leads to some situation that is very rewarding to me, and I feel more satisfaction, then I will perform this behavior regularly, right? So self satisfaction is very important here. Next is vicarious reinforcement. So in case of self reinforcement, I will be reinforced directly, but in case of vicarious reinforcement, here the modeling perspective will be used. Okay, in case of vicarious reinforcement, it occurs when we see others reinforced or punished for a particular behavior. Okay, for like vicarious positive reinforcement, it occurs when observer increase behavior for which they have seen others are reinforced, right? Suppose for Bobodal experiment, a particular child observed that in a film clip, a child was rewarded by an adult person because he was behaving in a aggressively. So, okay, the child who is observing the film clip feels that okay, I should behave in that manner, so I will be rewarded particular way. I will be rewarded in future. Okay, here in case of vicarious reinforcement, reinforce can be occurred through observing others. Okay, but self-reinforcement is kind of an inactive learning type. So in case of self-reinforcement, I have to perform in a particular way, and the performance meets my internal standards and leads to rewarding situation. And if I get satisfaction, then I will perform those behavior. But in case of vicarious learning, I have to observe the model, and if the model will be reinforced or punished for a particular behavior, then I will produce the behavior. Okay, my the production of the behavior will increase or decrease. If the model will reinforce for a particular behavior, the production of the behavior will be increased for the observer. Or if the model will be punished for a particular behavior, then the production of that particular behavior will be decreased for the observer, right? So this is vicarious positive reinforcement, and another is vicarious punishment. Okay. So next is how this vicarious reinforcement occurs. Okay, there are 6 regulatory mechanisms involved in this case. First is informative function. Here, observer gains knowledge by observing model behavior, and it guides his behavior. Initially, suppose if I'm taking Bobodal experiment, if I'm taking the Bobodal experiment, so here I can here you can observe that the child who is the observer, the learner observing the model, okay, and observing that okay, I have to perform in a particular way. I have to attain the every aspect of the behavior, and because I need to perform in a particular way, because this behavior will help me to get rewarding condition. Okay, so observer have to get needs to get knowledge every aspect of the behavior. So you have to get every information about the behavior. Okay, so that it will help you to, it will guide you to behave in that manner. So you have to collect the information about the particular behavior that is performed by observer. Next is motivational factor, motivational function. So motivation, how the motivational function can be emerged. If observer notice that model is reinforced for certain behavior, then observer will be motivated to perform that behavior. Next is emotional learning. Various emotional vibe will which take place. It involves various emotional vibe. Suppose performing in a particular way, model achieve some rewarding condition. Okay, so it helps the model. It arise some satisfactory position, satisfactory feeling. ठीक है, if I am behaving in a particular way and I will get some reward, it help me to gain more satisfaction, right? And it is a very emotional, it includes some emotional vibe, right? So this kind of emotional vibe take place in observational learning process. Next is influenceability function. So learner susceptibility to direct information, the susceptibility to direct reinforcement is increased through observing the model's response to the similar situation, the similar reinforcement. Here susceptibility influenceability, that if the model is if model is getting some rewarding condition after performing in a certain way, and some satisfaction is associated with that all the condition, so it influenced me to behave in a particular way in my real life situation also. Okay, because I have urge, okay.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, Abhishek.
Okay. Okay.
You have any question?
No, actually, we use the motivational function, but emotional learning is very tough.
No, emotional wording not tough, like emotional vibe, like after you performing in a particular way, and I will praise you. Okay, Abhishek, you are doing very good job. So how you will feel? You will be satisfied because you have performed in a good way, and satisfaction have a very pleasant emotion. Satisfaction is associated with very good feeling, pleasant emotion, right? So I am
Yeah.
observing and observe a model that okay, certain behavior is very pleasant for me, certain behavior is very pleasant for the model. This is very emotional vibe, right? So it helps the learner to behave in that particular way. Okay. Okay. Next is modification of model status. Modification of model status. Model status can be rise or fall as a function of being rewarded or punished. Here the outcome that I explaining the behavior vicarious reinforcement, that if model status is reduced after performing a behavior, if model is punished because after performing a particular behavior, then you will perceive a model in a very inappropriate way, in a very negative way. Oh, the model is performing in an aggressive way, and he is punished by others also. So model is not very good. If I performing in that way, so I will be bad in front of others also. So no, my personal status will be hampered. So no, I will not performing in that way, right? But if model gets some reward for behaving in a particular way, right? So that helps me to increase my personal status also, right? Next is valuation. Models values play a role in a process. Models value means models character. How I'm putting my value to model, because model's characteristics very attractive. How the model is performing the behavior, and in which way the model is rewarded for performing that behavior, so that increase the model status. So it also increase the value of the model. So it also helped me to learn something new through observational learning. So these are the 6 regulatory mechanism is very important, right? Okay.
Ma'am, but in practical way,
बोलो.
hello,
हाँ हाँ.
yes ma'am. प्रैक्टिकली जो रिवॉर्ड एंड पनिशमेंट जो प्रोसेस वो अप्लाई नहीं कर पाते, उसमें बहुत प्रॉब्लम होती है व्हेन वी.
ठीक है, मतलब ऐसा नहीं है कि तुमको रिवॉर्ड में कुछ देना ही है. जैसे कि अगर सपोज मतलब रिवॉर्ड इन द नॉट इन अ मेटीरियलिस्टिक वे. अगर तुम किसी को हेल्प कर रहे हो, ठीक है, सपोज तुम किसी को हेल्प कर रहे हो, ओके, और
Yeah.
हेल्प के बदले में वो बंदा तुमको कभी ना कभी तुमको हेल्प कर रहा है. सपोज आज
हम्म.
तुम किसी नीडी पर्सन को कोई तुमसे उधार मांगा, ठीक है, और
हम्म.
तुमने उसको उधार दिया. और तुम्हारा दोस्त जो है तुम्हारे इस बिहेवियर को ऑब्जर्व कर रहा है, तो एक दिन
Yes.
क्या हुआ, तुम भी वही एक सिचुएशंस में आ गए और तुम भी किसी से उधार मांगे और तुमने भी वो उधारी में तुमको भी वो कुछ ना कुछ रिवॉर्ड मिला कि तुम्हारे उस दोस्त ने कहा, अरे एक दिन मैं जब एक नीडी पोजीशन में था, तूने मुझे हेल्प किया, तो दिस इज माय टर्न टू हेल्प यू। तो थर्ड पार्टी जो है, जो तुम्हारा ये पूरा कंडीशन ऑब्जर्व कर रहा था, वो भी सोचा अच्छा किसी को हेल्प करना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, बहुत गुड है, क्योंकि आगे चल के ये मुझे बहुत हेल्प करेगा।
Okay.
तो रिवॉर्ड मीन्स माने इधर में तुमको रिवॉर्ड इमीडिएटली मिलेगा ऐसा नहीं है,
Yes,
रिवॉर्ड
ma'am.
तुमको मेटीरियलिस्टिक में भी मिलेगा ऐसा नहीं है, ठीक है,
Yes, ma'am.
कोई भी फॉर्म में तुमको, कोई भी साइकोलॉजिकल फॉर्म में तुमको मिल सकता है।
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's a practical.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Next important concept is periodic reciprocal causation model. That is very important, because social learning theory explains that psychological functioning in terms of social reciprocal causation. Here, Bandura explained that our personality is basically shaped by the interaction between three factors. That is person factor, that actually also known as cognitive factor. Another is behavior factor. Another third is environmental factor. So interaction between three of them, it is very important to shape our personality. Okay. So many dysfunctional function also be learned from this experience also, right? So I'm giving an example for this behavior, how depression can be developed through periodic reciprocal causation model. So firstly, basically, suppose an environmental condition emerged. Okay, so the particular environmental condition emerged and it affects your personal factor, that is cognitive factor. Okay, how you process the environmental factor, you have a plan, you have a certain plan, and on the basis of that plan you behave in a certain way, and your behavior will also impact your environment. So I am giving you example. Suppose if I obtain a poor marks in a particular subject. Okay, so getting a poor marks in a particular subject, it is an environmental factor. Okay, it is an environmental factor. Getting a poor mark in a particular subject, it is an external factor. It is an environmental factor. Okay, then the environmental factor may affect my personal factor in two ways. Suppose after getting a poor mark, I start to think that I am not a very good student. Okay, so this is my expectation, this is my attitude towards me, this is my knowledge that I am not a good student because I am getting poor marks. Okay, my teacher give me poor grades for a particular subject, my teacher gave me poor grades to a particular subject. This is the environmental factor, and this environmental factor affects my cognitive factors, and I started thinking that I'm not a very good student. This is my cognitive factor. Okay, and this cognitive factor may affect my behavior, that I constantly avoid my studies, I constantly avoid my classes, I constantly avoid interacting with that particular teacher, right? So this is the behavioral factor. So how here environmental factor affects my cognitive factors. So how we process environmental factor, it affects my behavioral factor, and then behavioral factor also impact my environmental factor. If I constantly avoiding my studies, if I constantly delaying my studies, if I constantly ignoring the classes, if I constantly avoiding interacting my teacher, then my teacher will again shout on me. So this is again the environmental factor. So you get my point, na? So in first environmental factor emerge, not necessary that first environmental factor will be emerged every time, not. But I am giving an example. Suppose environmental factor emerge and environmental factor impacts on my cognitive factor. How we process the environmental factor, my cognition, my knowledge, my expectation will impact my behavioral factor, and the behavioral factor will also affect the environmental condition. So this is the change, interchangeably it is going on.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I personally feel this. Hello,
Okay.
मैम ये चीज तो
Yes,
मेरे
yes,
साथ भी हुई है। जब मैं एक्चुअली
yes, yes.
5th क्लास से पहले एक्चुअली हम इंग्लिश मीडियम में थे, मीन्स ईमान मिशन स्कूल्स में। तो इसमें बिहेवियर
हाँ,
फैक्टर बड़ा आता है, क्योंकि जब हमको एक्चुअली समझ में नहीं आ रहा था, जैसे हिंदी पढ़ते हैं तो हमें क्या है कि स्कूल इंग्लिश मीडियम होने की वजह से हमको क्या है कि ना 12 कड़ी एक होती है कका की, वो नहीं सिखा रहे थे, वो डायरेक्ट पढ़ना सिखा रहे थे। तो बच्चों ने पढ़ना सीखा था, और मैं हमेशा लॉजिकली पढ़ता था। अगर मुझे समझ में आया तो ठीक, नहीं आया तो मैं पूछूंगा, ठीक है। तो बाद में पता लगा मुझे हिंदी पढ़ना नहीं आया था या इंग्लिश पढ़ना भी, और बाकी बच्चे सबको आ गया था। तो मेरे जो मदर है वो गए कि इसको पढ़ना क्यों नहीं आया, बाकी को आ गया। और मैं बड़ा क्लियर बताता कि भाई मुझे तो नहीं आया, जो नहीं आया नहीं आया, और रटना शुरू से नहीं आता था। फिर बाद में पता लगा क्योंकि उन्होंने 12 कड़ी सिखाई नहीं थी, तो और बाकी बच्चों ने क्या शब्द याद कर लिए थे। तो इस वजह से वो जो रटने की प्रवृत्ति थी उससे वो आगे बढ़ रहे थे। ठीक है, तो उससे मुझे नहीं, जैसे ही वो 12 कड़ी सिखाया तो कंसेप्ट क्लियर हो गया। इसके अलावा एक चीज जो थी, आपका बिहेवियर ये बता रहे हैं, तो ये पढ़ना नहीं आया, इस वजह से क्या मार पड़ती थी, है ना। और उसका स्पेलिंग में मिस्टेक्स भी काफी होती थी, क्योंकि वो कंसेप्चुअली नहीं बताया, तो वो रटना था। उससे उससे क्या, वो एक नेगेटिविटी आ गई पढ़ने के प्रति, है ना। समझ रहे हैं मैडम, तो बिहेवियर में चेंज
एकदम
आया।
करेक्ट,
हाँ, तो
एकदम करेक्ट, एकदम
हाँ,
करेक्ट।
वो नेगेटिविटी है। तो टीचर्स ने क्या किया कि नहीं यार, इसको पनिशमेंट करना चाहिए। उस समय मारते बहुत थे, तो कम से कम 5-5 6-6 पीरियड मार पड़ती है, बाहर खड़े होते हैं हाथ ऊपर करके। तो मैंने मदर को बोला जाके कि भाई मम ये इस स्कूल में नहीं पढ़ना है। तो मदर ने कहा क्यों नहीं पढ़ना, क्या प्रॉब्लम मुझे। मैंने कहा मुझे तो नफरत सी हो गई है, यहाँ मारने के अलावा कुछ करते ही नहीं, कोई प्यार से तो सिखाता नहीं है। और इनका बिहेवियर देखो, ऐसे देखते हैं जैसे कोई मैं दुश्मन हूँ क्लास में खड़े होंगे तो। वो थोड़ा मेरा कहना क्लियर था, मतलब मैं क्रिस्टल क्लियर था ये शुरू से कि भाई ये इस तरह से, ये उस तरह से, वो बता देता था। कोई टीचर डरा या कुछ भी करे तो मदर गई, देखा उन्होंने, फिर उन्होंने बताया कि इस तरह से था। और एक बार वेरी वेरी पुअर लिख दिया, तो बड़ा जोर से उन्होंने डांटा प्रिंसिपल सबको बुला के कि मेरा बच्चा तो देखो स्पोर्ट्स में बहुत अच्छा है, ड्राइंग इतनी अच्छी है, इसका मतलब आपके यहाँ पढ़ाने में कोई मिस्टेक हो रही है, कि मेरा बच्चा पढ़ नहीं रहा, मैं खुद पढ़ाऊंगी। तो वो जो नेगेटिविटी और वो बिहेवियर चेंज हो रहा था, तो प्रिंसिपल सबको मतलब गलत चीज के लिए डांटा कि भाई आपने बच्चे के साथ बहुत गलत किया है, आपने पनिशमेंट दिया है उसको, है ना, इस तरीके से पढ़ाना था। तो फिर थोड़ा टीचर ने मेहनत की और थोड़ा मुझे ट्यूशन भी पढ़ाया, तो बड़ा ही मतलब तरीके से मुझे पढ़ाया। एक टीचर थे हमारे पास सांझी सर, उन्होंने मैथ्स भी बड़ा तरीके से पढ़ाया, इंग्लिश हिंदी जो भी है। तो कंसेप्ट पढ़ाते उससे मुझे मतलब मीन्स मेरा इम्प्रूवमेंट भी हुआ। और आगे जाके जैसे ही मैं 8 9 10th में आया तो मैं ऑलराउंडर की तरह हो गया, मीन्स स्पोर्ट्स और ड्राइंग था, और फिर पढ़ना भी आ गया मैडम। तो एकदम ऑटोमेटिक फिर रिवॉर्ड मिलने लगे, और जो जो पूरे स्टूडेंट्स थे उनको मैं पढ़ाता था, तो मेरा कंसेप्ट भी क्लियर हो जाता था। तो 10th तक आते आते मतलब बिल्कुल क्लियरिटी हो गई थी मैडम। ये चीज जो मेरे साथ हुई है। थैंक यू मैम।
So, very good, Abhishek. So, thank you for sharing your experience. So that here the reciprocal triadic reciprocal causation help us to explain how behavior, environment, and person depends on which the triadic factor is strongest at a particular moment. And any dysfunctional behavior such as aggression, phobia, depression can also be explained through this model also. Okay, so it is actually very good model to explain the personality. Okay, how personality is shaped by the interaction among three, right? So next very important thing, that is human agency, right? So in case of like, so the social learning theory, one second. So, social learning theory takes a very good viewpoint of personality. That means that humans have a capacity to exercise control over their own life. Actually, Bandura believes that people can self-regulate, provocate, self-reflect, and self-organize, and that they have the power to influence their own action to produce desired outcome. Okay, so human agency is not a thing but a active process of exploring, manipulating, or influencing the environment in order to attain desired outcome, right? So there are some core features of human agency. First is intentionality. So intentionality refers to acts of a person that performs intentionally, right? So intentionality does not mean that all of a person's plan will be brought to a fruitful condition. People continuously change their plans as they become aware of their consequences and their actions. Mane, uh, mane, uh, it is intention includes planning, but also involves action also. Okay, it is not simply an expectation or predict the future action, but a commitment to bringing the goals, right? Next is fourth thought. So fourth thought is, here we have to set a goal and to anticipate likely outcome of their action. People always possess some foresight to predict a goal, to set a goal, and to anticipate to to anticipate likely to outcomes of their actions, and to select behavior that will produce desired outcomes and avoid the undesired outcomes, right? So if behavior were completely a function of the environment, then behavior would be more variable and less consistent, because we would constantly be reacting to a great diversity of the stimuli, right? So but if people do not behave constantly shifting their direction, then it will hamper, it will hamper their outcome also. So in case of intentionality, they people have to perform in a particular behavior because they have certain plan to get some particular consequences. Okay, but in case of foresight, they have a certain amount of money. They have already set a particular goal. And to achieve the particular goal, we have to behave in a certain behavior to produce desired outcomes. Okay, if we perform, if we are not performing it that way, suppose we want a good marks in our examination, it is my particular goal. So to obtain a good marks, we have to study regularly. So it is the particular behavior to produce the particular outcome. So this is the fourth side. So this is the planning that we have to get the particular outcome, right? Next is self-reflectiveness. So self-reflectiveness is the process. Here Bandura recognized that setting goal is not sufficient to attain desired outcomes. Goal must be specific, but and goal be within a person's ability to achieve. Okay, and because we have to process it is a process of motivating and regulating own action. If we plan a particular behavior, but we do not have such capacity to achieve that things, so we are not uh, mane, we cannot regulate our behavior in a positively, right? So we have to motivate ourselves to regulate our positive behavior. We have to people not only make choices, but they monitor their progress towards fulfilling those choices. So this is a process of self-reactiveness. Next is self-reflectiveness. So self-reflectiveness, finally, people have a component of self reflectiveness because they are the examiners of their own functioning. They can think about and they can evaluate their motivation, values, and the meaning of their goals, right? So people's most crucial self reflective mechanism is the self efficacy, right? If they can evaluate the effect that other people's action if they can evaluate that, if their values, their action produce some particular help them to produce some particular goal that they want, So it will help them to increase their sense of self-efficacy. Okay, because self-efficacy is very important thing. Self-efficacy means it is a basic knowledge about the self, that we are efficient to perform a particular behavior in a particular way. Self-efficacy is help us to increase our self-esteem, efficiency. Okay, if we are efficient to plan a behavior, then we can uh, plan a particular behavior that has a particular intention to produce particular outcome, and we can reflect, we can regulate our behavior, and, we can constantly motivate our behavior, and we can constantly value our behavior to obtain that particular goals, right? So this is very important thing, to manipulate, to influence our particular behavior, to explore the environment also to get the desired outcomes. You understand the human agency? Okay. Okay, so okay. Then next slide is on self-efficacy. So Bandura defined as self-efficacy as the people's belief in their capabilities to exercise some measures of control over their own functioning and over environmental events, right? So I already mentioned that self-efficacy is the kind of a self-concept that we have some efficiency. We are very efficient to behave the particular way to get desired outcomes. Okay, so self-efficacy is very important to uplift our emotion also. For depression, who are very depressed, who are diagnosed with depression, so it has been studied that who are depressed, the sense of self-efficacy is reduced for them. So they feel that they are not very efficient to do any kind of activity. Okay, for the depressive patient, sense of self-efficacy is very low, right? So, but who are very optimistic, the self-efficacy, the amount of self-efficacy is very higher amount, right? So what are the sources of self-efficacy? So first is mastery experience. Mastery experience that suppose it is very important for to increase our self efficacy. Mastery experience, firstly it is mane successful performance mane increases self efficacy in proportion to the different difficulty of the task. Okay, difficulty of the task. Suppose for example, highly skilled cricket player gains little self-efficacy by defeating clearly inferior opponent, but they gain much more higher self-efficacy by performing well against superior opportunities. So if we perform very positively against difficult tasks, then we feel that our sense of mastery will be increased. Okay, sense of accomplishment will be increased, and this help us to increase our sense of self-efficacy. So if you see a depressive patient, so you have to consider their abilities. Okay, you have to tell about their abilities, their achievement. Okay, how they achieve very difficult tasks. Okay, so this knowledge will help them to uplift their self-concept, uplift their self-esteem, uplift their sense of self-efficacy. So it will help to improve their emotions, right? Next is social modeling. Social modeling, that witnessing others successfully completing a task. Okay, suppose our self-efficacy will be arised when we observe that the accomplishment of another person of equal competence. Suppose you are feeling afraid that you will not perform, you will not play good in a cricket match. Okay, but if you observe that your friend who is equally potent like you, okay, you who is equally potent, he performed very good during his match. So observing his performance, you feel that, okay, if he or she can perform, then I will also perform. Because we have same knowledge, we are equally trained, right? So social modeling help us to uplift our efficacy. Next is a social persuasion. Here, people can persuade. That I'm saying that as a counselor, you can persuade your patient that you have already good things, you have already good abilities, you have already good skills, and through the using the skills, you have already achieved very good things in your life, right? So one significant negative experience cannot decrease your whole positive experience, right? So you can persuade and make believe the person that they have positive skills. So uh, Bandura emphasizes that the money boosting self-efficacy through social persuasion will be effective only if the activity one is being encouraged to try is within one repertoire of the behavior, right? So money verbal persuasion is very important. Okay, you can highlight the positive things of the particular behavior, right? Like as a psychotherapist, as a counselor, you can persuade, you can highlight, you can suggest that no, you can do, you can perform, you have those ability, you have those ability, that's why you can achieve those things in your life. But in future you can use those ability, don't be so inconfident, right? So you can verbally persuade your patient. Next is physical and emotional status, right? So strong emotion ordinarily lower performance, but when people experience intense fear, acute anxiety, or higher level of stress, they are likely to have lower self-efficacy, right? But people having higher level of confidence, higher level of optimistic value, it will help them to increase their performance. And after successfully performing a particular behavior, it will help them to increase their sense of self-efficacy. So people's own response and emotional reaction to situation also play an important role in self-efficacy. So in this manner, you can help your patient to increase the self-efficacy. If you are seeing a depressive patient, you can highlight their mastery point, you can highlight their skills, you can highlight their potentialities, you can persuade that through using your potentiality you already own cricket match, through using your potentialities you already successfully obtained good marks in a particular subject in your graduation and post graduation. Okay, so you have to persuade, you have to point out the positive mastery things, you have to point out the positive experiences. Okay, and you have to encourage to experience positive emotions, right? So in this manner you can explain, you can highlight, you can increase the sense of self efficacy in your patient, or you can explain why the self-efficacy has been decreased in a particular patient without pointing these sources, right? So this is the self-efficacy. Next point is very important, that is self-regulation. So according to Bandura, humans are able to control their behavior through the process of self-regulation, right? Bandura believes that people use both reactive and proactive strategies. People reactively attempt to reduce the discrepancy between their accomplishment and their goal, but after they close those discrepancy, they proactively set newer and higher goals of them, right? Self, how they can regulate their self, because suppose a person behaving so aggressively, aggressive is a personal trait, right? So you can explain why are you being aggressive, why are you being aggressive, you can explain through observational learning that you maybe you already observe. First you have to take family history, first you have to take some personal history, then you can get some information that the person already exposed many aggressive experiences, so that they already he already learned that aggressive behavior is only one mechanism to control others. After this explanation, you can explain the triadic reciprocal position that, okay, certain behavior, certain environmental condition makes you to behave, makes you to think negatively, and your negative thinking process makes you to behave in a aggressively. Okay, so in that way you can explain your patient that why are you behaving in an aggressive pattern, but you can regulate your aggressive pattern. Suppose I am giving you example. Suppose I am scolding you in a very bad manner in front of the whole class. Okay, so you feel that, oh, why the teacher is so rude to me. Okay, why she was scolding to me, right? So you are behaving. I'm not. He is very rude. He is very negative, right? So you constantly think some negative aspects about myself. Okay, then you feel that I'm very rude, I'm very negative, you constantly thinking some negative aspects about myself. Okay, so you creating some negative attitude about myself, then you next time you behave aggressively to me. Okay, so your thinking process affect your behavior. So here you can ask your patient that you can change your thought process, you can change your thought process, you can change your mechanism, how you about your mental process. If you think the environment in a positive manner, then you can regulate your behavior also. Okay, so here both here self efficacy play a huge role in self regulation process. You have to persuade your patient that you have that efficiency, you have the capacity to regulate your own behavior, because the regulator of to control your behavior is in your hand, in your control. Okay, so next is the what are the factors in self regulation. Now first is external factor. External factor that firstly external factor provide human with a standard for evaluating their own behavior. Secondly, external factor influence self regulation by providing the means of the reinforcement. Suppose you are behaving aggressively, I am commenting that your behavior is not good for that particular situation. So I am evaluating your behavior. So after getting this comment, you will evaluate your own behavior. Okay, I'm getting this comment from external factor. So this behavior is not appropriate for particular situation. So you will be, then you will be, it is a kind of a punishment. It is a kind of a punishment that I'm giving you some negative comment about your behavior. So next time you try to not behaving in a aggressive way. You try to regulate your own behavior. Okay. Next is internal factor. Internal factor can work in a three process. First is self-observation. Here, firstly, you have to make a own internal standard, internal standards. Then you constantly observe your present behavior, that your present behavior actually your present behavior is matching your internal standard or not. Okay, so internal self-observation is a process involving assessing one's own thoughts and feeling in order to motivate the individual towards a particular goal, right? Next is you are observing your every elements of your behavior. Next is judgment. Judgment, here you are constantly comparing your current behavior with your created personal standard. Okay, if you are behaving negatively and your personal standard is not to behave in a negative manner, and your current behavior is not matching with your current standard, then you create a judgment that no, my behavior is not matching with my own moral standard. Okay, after making a judgment, next point is coming that self response. Self response is applied in which individual may reward or punish his or herself for success or failure in meeting the standard. If you successfully meet your standard, then you can praise yourself. Okay, praise yourself. Okay, I'm behaving in a good way, so I'm a very good girl, very good person. Okay, because I'm helping other, I'm not behaving in a rude way. Okay, I'm very polite, I'm very cooperative with others. Okay, so you can constantly praising yourself. If you're behaving in a very aggressively, right, so you can punish yourself. You can constantly make critical comment about you, or you can remove any particular things that is very pleasant for you. Okay, suppose you are planning that if I am not behaving aggressively today, okay, then I will reward myself by eating some uh, by treating me uh, to treating me like, okay, if I am not behaving, if I am behaving aggressive way, then I will not treat myself, right? So in that manner you can respond yourself, right? So in that manner you can regulate your behavior. Okay, so these are the external or internal factor. Okay, so you understand the self-efficacy process and self-regulation process. You have any question?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so then last thing, coming to the criticism. So Bandura's theory criticized by biological theorists because who argued that he ignored the biological state. Okay, in even social learning theory focus on overt behavior, right? Critic charges that this emphasize this they Bandura ignores distinctly human aspect of personality such as motivation and emotion. Okay, because he is constantly we cannot learn how we will get motivated, how will we will have positive emotion, how we will have negative emotion, cannot was not explained by Bandura. How we will have positive or negative emotion through observing others was not explained by Bandura. Bandura only focuses on overt behavior that is observed by others. Okay, so and critics said that not all behaviors can be learned through social learning process. Okay, actually, Bandura explained social learning process by explaining the aggressive mechanism, how to be aggressive or not. Okay, so critics say that not all behaviors can be learned through social learning process, right? Okay, so you have any question? Anybody? Priyanka, Darsh, Orpita, Abhishek.
Ma'am, please show the slide self-efficacy.
Acha. Here. Yes, Priyanka, you have any question from this slide?
Yes, ma'am. Social modeling and social the persuasion example, ma'am, only.
Okay, social modeling that, so I'm saying that social modeling that witnessing others perform successfully. I gave example that if my friend, which is who is equally trained to play a cricket match, how to play a cricket match, okay, how to perform in a cricket match, equally trained, okay. So if he can perform, okay, after his performance, if he perform, he get reward from the teachers, from the trainers. If he perform in a good way, his performance can help me to elevate my sense of self-efficacy. If I am performing in a good way and you are observing that, okay, if he can perform in a good way, or we are already trained in an equal manner, then I will also perform. Okay. In case of social persuasion, you can persuade others that no, you have good potential as a psychotherapist, as a counselor. You can persuade your own counselor that no, you have that potential. Pose, don't pose some negative experiences about that, negative things about yourself. Right? You have to highlight positive aspects of yourself. Okay, you are constantly persuading your client about his or her positive things. Okay, so through persuasion, constantly listening positive things about him or herself, your person after certain session, your client can be motivated and feel efficient to do some work, right?
Okay, ma'am. That means social modeling. Here, the person will observe some other one or some peer group, and they will motivate themselves. But in case of social persuasion, his or her counselor will motivate him.
Anytime, any person. I'm saying the counselor, but any person. The parents can do persuasion. His mother can persuade him. His father can persuade him. His friend can persuade him. Any kind of person. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Mane social modeling, he will do it by himself. And number 3, the social persuasion, some other person will motivate him or her.
And in social modeling, he will motivate himself by observing others' performance.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone? Okay. Anyone else?
No, ma'am, it's
Orpita
clear.
Garg? Okay.
Yeah, clear, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Then thank you. Okay. Then we will have our next class on Sunday, right? I will share the PPT in our Google Class. Okay. If you have
Thank
any
you.
query, then please ask me or give me a message. I will respond.
Thank you
Right?
very much, ma'am. Really, thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good night.
Good night, ma'am. And happy Yoga Day also to all of you.
Happy Yoga Day.
Thank
Happy
you.
Music Day.
Happy Yoga Day.